All right, Hector, thank you. 6:46. It's time now for our Morning Cup of Joe segment. Metro Sheriff Joe Lombardo joining us to talk a little bit about law enforcement here in the Valley. Sheriff Lombardo, good to see you again this morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, John.
Got the technology worked out. So we just mentioned a few moments ago at the Republican National Convention, President Trump pardoned Jon Ponder. He works with the Hope for Prisoners effort here in Las Vegas. We've seen what Metro Police has done with that program before. We've seen it profiled. Talk a little bit more and explain to our viewers at home again the relationship between Ponder, the nonprofit, and Metro Police trying to help people who are out of prison.
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And I was surprised when I heard about him getting pardoned by the president. The president, the last time he was here, he had mentioned the possibility of that occurring, and I guess he made that decision here recently. So the program, Hope for Prisoners, is where individuals recently released from the prison system are reintroduced to society, per se. So a partnership was formed with Jon Ponder. The Hope for Prisoners auspice, or the program, was built under his mentorship and directorship. So the police officers in my organization are directly engaged on a daily, weekly basis in class education, society education, reintroducing individuals that have been incarcerated for some period of time into society and what to expect and what resources are available, what education they can obtain, and hopefully be successfully employed. And then reintroduce them to their families, teach them how to be a parent again. So that's a big part of what society expects from individuals that have children. And it's all a process. So they've been removed from those processes and the daily requirements and responsibilities. And it's a process of reintroducing them. And the best thing about this program, you know, there's a lot of well-intended programs out there. But the best part about this program is the recidivism is very low. So it has a high probability of success for individuals and make them a functioning, contributing individual in society. Yeah,
we've profiled it here, as you know, Sheriff, so it's a good program, and good to see what happened there with Jon Ponder. Let's switch gears a little bit and talk about the issues of mental health and the crisis in our community. The response by Metro officers when they're dealing with someone who is suffering from mental illness. There have been some shootings involving that recently. You've talked before about efforts to try and find alternatives to dealing with those people on the street. What alternatives are in place, and maybe what's being considered moving forward?
Yeah, I think the hurdle, I'm glad you bring this subject up, because part of the defunding discussions that are going on around the nation, reference police departments, include maybe a better way to respond to these types of calls where people are directly involved in some kind of mental crisis. Either they're the victim or the suspects. And when the police show up, which are the first responders, when people are lost to what to do, they dial 911. So obviously we become the first responder. And sometimes with our presence, our mere presence causes escalation versus de-escalation. And a lot of times that's because of lack of resources. So you don't know what to do, you call 911, we respond because we have to respond, we need to respond. But maybe there's a better way to do that. So my officers receive a modicum of training in mental crisis. It's called crisis intervention training and/or team. It's 40 hours in the academy. It's continual recertification on an annual basis. But the intent is to expand their resume and learn how to deal with people in crisis. In other words, de-escalate, talk them down, and eventually when we're able to calm the situation, make it static, provide resources in lieu of incarceration. And that's the problem with police work involved in this type of business, per se, or profession, is our answer is arrest, usually because of lack of resources or community resources. So if you change that paradigm and you have individuals that are professional in that type of issue, they have better access to resources, better understanding of the individual in crisis, and maybe give the police more tools to be successful versus unsuccessful in these types of situations.
Well, have there been discussions so far with commissioners or with, I know the special session just finished, but moving forward with lawmakers about trying to put something on the books that will help with that?
To be frank with you, no, John. I think a lot of people's heads were still spinning on after the special session. I anticipate we're going to be engaged in some of those conversations because it usually involves dollars and my budget per se. But the city of Las Vegas has made that leap via their fire service. So they got that program in place because, you know, when you call dispatch, it's either police or medical or fire. We transfer those calls over to medical if it's a mental crisis, and then they have fire and or social services respond. So what we want to do is build on that program and then move it over into the county because they've had a lot of success so far with it.
All right, we'll see how that goes. Let's quickly go as we wrap up here to our final question about crime on the Las Vegas Strip. That's always an issue. Obviously, we know what's going on the Strip with the coronavirus. What sort of crimes are we seeing now, or is Metro seeing now on the Strip, considering the fact that not all the properties are open and maybe the people we're seeing on the Strip right now, it's not what we're used to?
Yeah, I agree with you. We are seeing an increase in crime, or the presence of crime, or the perception of crime along Las Vegas Boulevard, in particular through the Strip. I think part of that might be the lowering of room rates. The type of customer that is showing up, they're more interested in creating chaos versus entertaining themselves or enjoying themselves, what Las Vegas is intended to do. So in a couple episodes previously, on Cup of Joe, a question was presented: did I reallocate or move resources on the strips and some of the properties that were closed down into the neighborhoods? And my answer was no, because of what you're describing. There's a lot more people out walking versus in the casinos. The casinos aren't offering a lot of options as far as entertainment and food and what we're traditionally used to. So people, idle hands, devil's workshop kind of thing. So when you get crowds gathered together that don't like each other, alcohol infused, it causes disruptions and things that we don't appreciate. So my guys are busy, my folks are busy on a regular basis. We have had a good handle of crime here recently after we identified the issues that you described. We adjusted resources, so we got resources to bear there on the Las Vegas Boulevard, and I'm happy to say that we've turned the tide of the increase in crime to a decrease here recently.
Well, Sheriff Lombardo, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. If you have a question at home for the sheriff, you can, of course, submit it at 8newsnow.com. Good Day Las Vegas is back after this.